Gertrude? My dead Aunt Gertrude?
Hello.
Is it me you're looking for?
I talked about the original 20-issue run of Image Comics' I Hate Fairyland for about 50 minutes in this video. I mentioned in that video that there was a continuation made in 2022, and that I wanted to talk about this new run in the future. Well, the future is now. Another 15 issues have been released, so where do they stack up against the original? Volume 4 was overall pretty rough. I think I made that clear in my first video. This volume has had very little comedy because it's so focused on the story. And the story doesn't even make sense! What upset me the most is that the series ended in the first place. This concept of a violent, vulgar maniac stuck in a little girl's body in a land of fairy tale cheer and whimsy is a concept that could have easily gone on for a long time. And Scotty ended it after 20 issues. That isn't very much, in case you were wondering. I get it, you know. Scotty was making this series by himself practically. He wanted to work on other things, he had other stories to tell, yada yada whatever. I'm saying all this because more of this character was in high demand after the series ended, so it makes sense that issue 20 wouldn't be the end. What doesn't make sense is just about everything after. The foreshadowing of this identity crisis, as I've called it, can be seen before you even open the darn thing. The first trade paperback of this new series, titled Gert's Inferno, is labeled as Volume 5, yet when you open it up, it starts with issue number 1. So does it want to be a continuation, or is this a brand new thing? But that doesn't really matter. Let's get into this series starting with issue number 1, which is also kind of issue number 21. It starts out in good old Fairyland fashion with a narrator. This mouse guy tells the story of Gert the Gruesome to her little mouse daughter. We see all sorts of memorable moments and characters throughout the original series. Even that part that I specifically omitted from my initial review, don't look at that. The narration is abruptly ended when we see Gert taking out the trash, working at this greasy fast food place. I guess she lost her job at IHF somehow. We see Gert getting frustrated with the customers, one of which says the word bruh. I would say this is a how do you do fellow kids moment, but this is literally how I talk, so I can't really judge Scotty's ability to mimic the contemporary vernacular of Gen Z. So I suppose I'll have to give him a pass this time. She gets fired for, I guess, daydreaming about brutally murdering the customers. Listen, I've worked fast food before, so I can confidently say that this is completely unhealthy behavior. You shouldn't daydream about murdering people. That's bad.
You guys, we went to Panera Bread to get some sandwiches and soup. So I decided to get the Chipotle chicken avocado sandwich with some mac and cheese and some chips. So this is the sandwich.
Anywho, we see her cycling between jobs because she sucks at everything. Until one of the patrons at this bar she always hangs out in gets fed up with her and, does all of this to her. Let me tell you, this was a good scene, but personally, my favorite Image Comics woman destruction moment was in Chew, when Tony beats the ever-living crap out of his own sister. She's left in the gutter at rock bottom before this weird rat thing comes and takes her to see William Wiggins, who's this Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Willy Wonka type person. He calls his staff Pretendineers, being a play on Disney's Imagineers, so I guess Michael Eisner can get grouped in there too. He explains to Gert that his son is missing in Fairyland and that he wants Gert to go back there and find him. And that's pretty much where issue 1/21 ends. Alright, so what was my reaction to this first issue as a longtime fan of the series? First of all, I really do like Brett Bean's art for this new run. I think his style complements the tone of I Hate Fairyland very well. It's cartoonish and dynamic, very much like Scotty's art. There's a lot of motion and humor to it as well, so I think it definitely fits I Hate Fairyland. Of course I prefer Scotty's art over Brett's, but if it means getting issues out more quickly, then I'm 100% okay with Brett taking over the illustrative side of things. Next, I must say I feel very vindicated in the opening when the mouse narrator says that Volume 4 was a bit convoluted and a little rushed. It felt very good hearing Scotty admit that, because this ending has been keeping me up at night for years, and now I can sleep peacefully. At least until we get to issue 9, then it's back to the Fairyland nightmares again. I would say this issue feels a little disjointed from the original series' ending. This office job she worked at isn't mentioned at all. I can certainly believe that Gert's incompetence got her fired from that job, but it seemed like she was there for a while at least. I don't see how she wouldn't be able to find another job at another office or whatever. There's a million reasons why you can come up with, but at the end of the day, all these explanations have to be conceived by the reader instead of being explicitly told in the text itself. What else is new? but none of that really matters. The first issue has to do a lot, and I can understand that a detailed explanation for why Gertrude doesn't work at an office anymore didn't take priority. This issue has to briefly summarize the story so far, reintroduce Gert's character, including her baffling incompetence, and establish the new story arc. I think this first issue does all of those things pretty well, so I can't complain. Yet. Issue 2 has William Wiggins explain how he found out about Fairyland's existence. He says his son was taken to Fairyland as a guest, and he started having his lab boys conduct experiments trying to invent a way to get there. After months of research, they learned that you have to actually be invited in order to enter Fairyland, meaning that yes, Duncan is a guest of Fairyland. It says it right here. You get shredded into pieces if you aren't a guest. At some point, this rat guy named Rotwald came through the other side and gave him more information about Fairyland, including a loophole about past guests being able to return. Wiggins wants to send Gert to Fairyland since she's a past guest and therefore won't get chug-jugged when going through the portal. Okay, now for the complaining. First of all, the Fairyland experience is supposed to last only one day. That's the whole point. To give kids a magical adventure and then send them back before much time has passed. We don't even know for sure if any time actually passes when guests return to Fairyland. I think issue 16 would imply not. When a guest returns, it's like they never even left, even if multiple decades have passed in the case of Gert. But this isn't definitive proof of that, since it was an illusion by the devil. If Wiggins' kid actually spent several months in Fairyland, then he would have been placed in his room at the exact moment he left, if you are to take issue 16 at face value. But either way, his kid is missing, and Gert's gonna go to Fairyland with Rotwald, and then Rotwald has a similar reaction that I had when hearing Gert's fake curse words for the first time. He says that Fairyland has swear sorcerers that magically censor all swear words, so I guess the uncensored version of the series isn't canon. It still doesn't explain the few times where the swear words aren't censored. We're only 2 issues in and I'm already getting a little too nitpicky, so let's just keep going. There's a bunch of references in this gun room when they're getting ready to go through the portal into Fairyland, like a lightsaber, a Koopa shell, some Pokeballs, Predator's arm blades thing, the gun from Gears of War, probably the Ninja Turtles' weapons, and Casey. They go through the portal and they end up in the Inferno instead of Fairyland. I don't know if the Inferno is hell, like what we saw in issue 15 and on. It doesn't seem like it. Virgil here says it's like a back door built specifically to filter out guests coming back to Fairyland, and all returning guests have to go through it. Okay, so what is that? Virgil has to be their guide through the Inferno since Gert eats his map for no reason. The journey through the Inferno is supposed to be pretty short, and I think you can see where this is going.
Down from 100 surplus to 1. Down from 100 surplus to 1. Down from 100 surplus to 1.
Issue 3 starts with Gert having this warp whistle thing that summons a really old bird that's supposed to take them across the Inferno into Fairyland. But because it's really old, it blows up. So they get a refund from everyone's favorite character, Bubba, who we find out later is Larry's cousin. They exchange their warp whistle for a cage with something called a Getlin. Getlins are able to fetch anything for you, so they take it into a pub. And have you guys ever seen the Steven Spielberg movie Gremlins? I just wanted to ask, it doesn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about. So there's an unlimited horde of Gertlins that they kill for several days straight. It turns out that if you kill the original Getlin, all the others will die. So they do that, but it's not actually dead. This issue felt very much like something from Volume 2. It was a pretty episodic adventure with some pretty funny moments, and it does actually become relevant later, so I'd say I liked this issue quite a bit.
Student watches porn and gets naked.
Alright, let's get this over with. Gert has to take a bath because she stinks, so she goes to this lake and gets swallowed by a giant sea beast and starts living in its guts like a nomad. And then they leave because her filthiness killed the beast. Great, I thought this one was pretty funny. If Gert was added to LEGO Dimensions, I would have liked her level to have been based on this issue. Moving on.
This world is not. This world is not. This world's not made for me.
So this one has a pretty ambitious idea of having a montage of Gert, Virgil, and Rot going through the Inferno, but there's an actual song meant to be played while you read. There's a QR code at the beginning of the issue that takes you to jacktheradio.com, where you can listen to the song that played for this issue's intro. I think it's a fine song, it fits well enough with what's going on, but the band that's playing in the background of the comic absolutely does not fit the tone of this song. This is like a punk or thrash metal band. and they are going a lot harder than the actual band playing the actual song. As the song plays, Gert finally gets to the borders of Fairyland, and she finally enters after years of trying. Turns out she didn't really need to go there in the first place, and it's too much of a liability to bring her back, so she's stuck in Fairyland again. But wait, there's a little post-credit scene where Rot meets Larry guiding another kid. That was the end of Volume 5. I was pretty excited to keep reading, even though I think this concept is most fun when it's a little girl wreaking havoc across a colorful, innocent world instead of a woman in her late 20s. I liked this volume. It has the same tone and humor as the previous books, but there really was something missing that made the original run so memorable and charming. I'd give it like a 3.
There's no way!
Volume 6 starts with introducing the new King of Fairyland and Queen Claudia's brother, King Claudius. He learns from the Censored that Gert is back in Fairyland, and what are these guys called? We've seen them be referred to as swear sorcerers, swearzards, and now censoreds. Scotty, you have got to make up your mind about what things in Fairyland are called. We see Gert talking to Larry again. He's guiding this kid named Thomas who was bitten by a werewoodle, so that's cool, I guess. King Claudius devises a plan to get rid of Gert by hiring Judd from issue 10 to travel to different universes in his souped-up station wagon and collect all of the different variants of Gert we've seen throughout the series. Even the one from issue 8 that you're not supposed to see. And what the fluff is good Gert supposed to do? She didn't even do anything in issue 15. Oh, and this caveman Gert is from an issue of the Untold Tales of I Hate Fairyland, in case you were wondering. Also, Queen Gert never even existed. She only existed in a dream in the real issue 6. How did Judd travel to a universe where this actually happened? That's the end of issue 6. By revealing that this is really where the plot is going. We're seriously pulling a multiverse thing like Rick and Morty, or Spider-Man, or Sonic Prime, or Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, or Bayonetta 3, or Fiona and Cake, or Multiverses, or Lego Dimensions, or Cartoon Network Battle Crashers, or Ultimate Custom Night. So Gert reverts Thomas's werewoodle curse really quickly, making me question why this plot development was even here. I think this is just another spoiled cursed brains incident. Anyway, Gert's plan is to hitch a ride with Thomas back to the real world, which almost worked until the multiverse Gerts caught up to her. The normal Gert, as I'm going to call her, compares adult Gert to the bass player of White Zombie. A funny comparison, but there is no way this little girl in the fairy princess dress knows what White Zombie is. Unless White Zombie exists in Fairyland somehow, it is completely preposterous that she would be familiar enough with this band that she knows who Sean is. I'm willing to believe that Gert was taken to Fairyland sometime in the 90s, since this continuation obviously takes place in the present, so that makes the Hot Topic reference not technically anachronistic, since Hot Topic first opened in 1989. But Hot Topic could not have been that popular in the 90s, right? An 8-year-old certainly wouldn't know what it is. She also makes a reference to the very popular and influential YouTube channel Biggie Bobo. Adult Gert tricks all the other Gerts to kill each other, leaving just Adult Gert and Normal Gert to fight. And Normal Gert wins. No tricks, no resurrections, no nothing. The Gertrude we met in I Hate Fairyland Chapter 1 is dead forever. Maybe. The series isn't over yet, but as I'm writing this, she hasn't come back yet, and I really doubt she will. So I Hate Fairyland goes back to being about a little psycho kid instead of a big psycho woman. I personally like the decision to make Gert a kid again, but this just felt overly convoluted. It was nice seeing the other versions of Gert again, but we don't really see them do anything. It also feels weird following essentially a new character from the one we've been following for years now. Obviously, she's the exact same as she's always been, and eventually it's not going to feel weird anymore, but this was just a very strange direction for the series to go. Chapter 8/28 starts very similar to Chapter 2, where we see Gert in a pub playing with a severed head. She explains how she got stuck in Fairyland again instead of being sent home, which was the deal she made with Claudius. Basically, Thomas was crying uncontrollably after Gert murdered the other Gerts. Understandable. I think I had the same reaction. So Gert pushes Thomas through the door to go home, leaving her stranded. This has got to be the most contrived reason for keeping her in Fairyland, bruh. The Gert I know would have just cut the kid's head off. I'm not saying I wish that happened, or am I? Anyway, Gert is stuck in Fairyland, and they decide to go find Duncan as a last resort way of leaving. Larry says, I'm not sure anyone ever told him he had a key to find. Yeah, I'm not sure Scotty knew there was a key for Duncan to find. This idea that Duncan has his own key to find is completely asinine if you've read the original series. At the end of Volume 1, the key disappears. Notice how I said the key, because there was never multiple keys, because there's never been multiple guests in Fairyland before Happy was invited in issue 3. The whole plot of the first volume is that Happy was going to take the key and go home, making Gert a citizen of Fairyland. It wouldn't have been a big deal if Happy got the key first, if Happy and Gert had their own personal keys to find. I have never seen a retcon this glaringly obvious in my life. So they find Duncan, who's like a lackey for Horabella, who died in issue 17, in case you forgot. How could you forget? Horabella's death was half of the things that happened in issue 17. Oh, actually that's Terabella, my mistake. Duncan is a grown man now, and I am not going on another rant about what this implies. Just watch this video. So Gert tells Duncan that he has his own key, which he didn't know, probably because it's not true. Duncan is mad about that, so he burns Gert alive.
I am on fire!
18 happy friends at a slumber party.
Turns out Duncan torching Gert was a fantasy and it didn't actually happen. So they leave to go get the key, which apparently exists. He burns Terabella, and okay, I'm drawing the line at Gert saying bruh. I know Gert. She would never say bruh. They leave to get drinks and Terabella just magically comes back to life. Honestly, if it was Horabella, this would be a fine explanation to why she isn't dead. Anyway, they're hanging out at a tavern again for like the 30th time, and they decide that they need Duncan's map in order to find Duncan's key, which again, there's no map for Duncan because he appeared in Fairyland via a magic outhouse. This wouldn't be so complicated and frustrating to read if Duncan just came to Fairyland normally. But no, we just had to have that How to Train Your Dragon reference. Whatever. Terabella makes a potion to turn Duncan into a real dragon for some reason, because I guess that would be bad for him. She sends this guy to put it in Duncan's drink, but Gert drinks it instead, and now she's a dragon and goes after Terabella. And Terabella's all scared, like, how did you not see this coming? They have a fight with a bunch of other witches, and Terabella makes another potion that turns Gert back into a person. After that whole debacle, we learn that the only person that can get Duncan's map is Claudia, who's been in jail since issue 20. So Gert, Duncan, and Larry are on their way to see Claudia in prison. And Gert wouldn't say yo either. That's like something I would say. Scotty, you're getting Gert confused with me. Anyway, the moon from issue 1 is back. Not really sure how he grew half his face, but whatever. He says something mean to Gert, so she burns him alive with a flamethrower, and they move on. So what was the point of that? Just to have a callback to the first issue? In the first issue, the moon getting blown up is what led to Claudia calling the huntsman. But here it's just fan service, I guess, and has no actual relevance to the plot. Eventually, they get to the prison, but they can't visit inmates, so Gert just kills the guards to get thrown in like any other inmate. Gert goes to reunite with Claudia, and I hate to nitpick this, but why does Gert have a yellow collar on her prison jumpsuit? In fact, why does Claudia have this little cloud trim on her jumpsuit? Why am I getting worked up over this? So you may be wondering, wait, why would Claudia be able to help at all with this? She was dead when Duncan came to Fairyland. They mention all of that, but still give no reason why Claudia specifically has the power to summon a map for Duncan. They say that Claudia was still technically the queen when Duncan came to Fairyland. No, she wasn't! Claudia died! Gert became the queen, then got fired, and then apparently the ruler of Fairyland hadn't been replaced yet, so it defaulted back to Claudia, who was dead? Why in the actual fluff would the council not have chosen a new ruler sooner? They fired Gert after seemingly months of awful rule as queen and didn't even have a replacement ready? I am actually losing my mind. The plot to these books still makes no sense. I can't believe after the mess that was Volume 4 that no lessons were learned, no mistakes were corrected, no improvements have been made in terms of keeping the rules and mechanics consistent. This isn't nearly as maddening as Volume 4, since here the plot holes are mostly connected to what we know from the original series, but this is still so annoying. Also, why is Nick Choppa here? This is just an excuse to bring Claudia back into the story. which I'm fine with. I'm glad Claudia came back, but there had to be a more coherent reason to bring her back, right? Okay, let's calm down. It's not a big deal. Let's just see where this goes. They go on a montage of their journey getting the key, and wait, we don't even see how Claudia got a map for Duncan to use? Okay, no way. I am done with this. I can't take it anymore.
Cheers! No, magic!
She like the way that I dance. She like the way that I move. She like the way that I rock. She like the way that I woo. She let it clap for a nigga. Grocery bag.
They get to the door, Duncan decides to stay in Fairyland, then Claudia steals the key last second and goes through the door into the real world. 2 stars. Okay, so this one is really just one giant joke at how characters will die in comics and stuff and then always come back. We see Claudia in the real world and she keeps getting killed, and then we cut back to Fairyland and Larry's all like, okay, she's actually really dead this time. Like, there's no way she's coming back. And then she does. It's pretty funny, but overall not really what I was hoping for when Claudia came to the real world. There's some random and completely out of left field references to Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Scotty, what is the matter with you? I know you're a Chiefs fan, but this is such a 2020s moment. This issue ends with Claudia being not dead. Great. Oh brother, this one is literally just a retelling of that one fairy tale where the goats are crossing the bridge with the troll underneath it, but Gert comes in at the end and kills the troll. There's not even a guest illustrator for this one. They wasted one of the coolest I Hate Fairyland covers on the most filler issue in this whole series. We're halfway through the volume and nothing's happened yet. Gert has barely even appeared in this volume so far.
My life be like, my life be like.
So now we're more than halfway through this volume and still nothing's happened. This issue is kinda similar to issue 11 in that it's just a big jab, but this time it's directed towards Hollywood and how they're completely out of ideas and only seem to be able to make things that are either sequels, reboots, or adaptations. It starts with a board meeting or something between these 2 Hollywood executives trying to make a cash grab Oscar bait movie. So they get Gertrude to be in on a biopic about her life. Larry is her agent suddenly, and there's a lot of scathing commentary about contracts, copyrights, merchandising, etc. I'm not sure what Scotty Young might have been involved with that sparked the necessity of commenting on the dodgy inner dealings of the entertainment industry, but it's all pretty funny. It feels a lot like in Deadly Class when we literally see Marcus being involved with a television adaptation of a book series that he wrote. Except as far as I know, Scotty doesn't have the personal experience to write a story like this, like Rick Remender does. I mean, he worked for Marvel, which I bet is pretty similar. But anyway, there's this joke that's kind of hard to explain, but I liked a lot. That's basically like Gert and Larry are talking to the producers of the movie with a first draft of the screenplay, and as the conversation goes on, it's revealed that the production is further and further along in development until it's revealed that the film's premiere is that night. I liked this scene a lot. So they watch the movie, and there are some pretty ridiculous changes to the source material. Larry is now the protagonist, and Gert just exists as sex appeal. Maybe Scotty does understand what industry he's satirizing.
Gertrude's actually hot now?
At first, I didn't even realize this was supposed to be Larry. I thought it was like a frogman or something. But the movie ends, and Gert and Larry puke themselves into the sunset. I thought this issue was pretty funny, but I'm kind of disappointed that a plot for this volume hasn't developed this far into the book. This issue starts with Bubba again. We see him traveling from the Inferno to Larry's new inn that he's running now. We also see the Snot Mountains again. Really glad they brought back this fan favorite panel from the original series. He explains the Gertland we saw at the end of issue 3 multiplied, and the Inferno's been dealing with them ever since. But now everything's taken care of. Except not really, because a Gertland crawled its way into Bubba's suitcase, and it goes about how you would expect. So now an endless supply of Gert-themed monsters are terrorizing Fairyland. A year passes, and Fairyland's become a dystopia from all the Gertlands, and we see that the moon is still on fire. Finally, something of a plot has started to develop. We've waited the whole volume for this, and now it's here. And I actually like this development a lot. It seems like it's going to have a lot of consequence, and will be pretty unique for the series, as long as you don't count issue 10 from the original series.
Here I am, right
Alright, so Larry and Gert are running around the desolate wasteland that is Fairyland when a guy with infernal powers shows up out of nowhere. He takes off his hood dramatically as if Gert and Larry know who Virgil is. He explains what happened with the Gertlands and that he has a plan to stop them once and for all. They go back to this ice castle place and put Gert in a vat. Virgil doesn't say what the plan is, but we find out pretty quickly when Gert wakes up as Gertzilla. She lays waste to the Gertlands and actually succeeds in saving Fairyland. Well, this is actually the second time Gert saved Fairyland, but it's the first time for this version of Gert. This volume concludes with the revelation that no one knows how to revert the changes, so I guess she's stuck as a giant monster now. This volume was really weird for me. On one hand, the more episodic stories felt very much like classic I Hate Fairyland, but at the same time, this has to be the most directionless volume so far. This is what I'm talking about when I say that I Hate Fairyland has an identity crisis. It doesn't know if it wants to be a laxed episodic comedy with wacky and exaggerated humor, or a plot-driven action series. I think the original struck some kind of balance between these two things, whereas in this new series, it feels like we're swapping between them without much care. I think Volume 5 managed to strike this balance similar to the first and third volumes, but as we move on to Volume 6, the plot was too heavy and was just weak overall. I don't understand how the potential for this series just keeps getting slipped up. I've read Scotty's other series. The plot is way tighter and more coherent in something like Middle West, or Twig, or even Bully Wars. So it's baffling to me that I Hate Fairyland doesn't seem to get it right. I really just think that balance needs to be found again. At the time I'm writing this, the 7th volume just released, with issue 16 literally just coming out. I don't want to wait until the 8th volume is released because I really want to get this video out. I'm just going to take the risk of this video being outdated the moment it's done, on the off chance that volume 8 actually pulls it together and is good. That's pretty much all my thoughts on the new series so far. There's still the Untold Tales that I can talk about, but I don't really have much to say about that spin-off series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Subscribe or die.
You're out here on the grind, rolling fearless stone by stone.
Volume 7 gets a 3, by the way. Just because of the snot mountains, though.